All right, thank you for joining today's town hall with Mad Security. We're going to give everybody a few more minutes because we had a lot in the waiting lobby here. I'm going to make sure everybody's joining. The numbers are going up. So just try to give everybody another 30, 60 seconds every month to join this so that everybody can catch as much as possible. So just another moment. We'll get started today. If you are on with us, definitely hope that you had a great Christmas, great New Year holiday, great time back in the office. Little update with Mad Security. Mad Security just moved to a larger location over the holiday as well here in Huntsville, still on site. For those of you that don't know, our SOC and compliance team is all on site here in Huntsville. So that is what we've been up to, getting all the boxes unpacked, everything settled. All right, enough about that. Thank you so much for joining today's town hall webinar. Again, I'm Adam Starnes, account manager here at Mad Security, and we're really glad that you are joining us here today. As I mentioned in the December town hall, I want to start by saying thank you. Thank you those that have joined us month after month for cybersecurity and CMMC news and updates. We truly appreciate your continued engagement. And those of you joining us for the first time today, welcome. We're glad you're here, starting 2026 off with us. We hope today's session is valuable, and no matter where you are in your compliance journey, we hope that you gain something from today's town hall. So before we jump in, I want to set the expectations up front. Today's session is intentionally going to feel a little more conversational. We're going to move between topics, and that's by design, very similar to how December's were. If you watched any before that, they were a little more structured on what it was that we spoke about. But there's a lot to cover in today's town hall, so it's going to go a little bit back and forth. So stick with us through it all, because you never know what it is that's going to be beneficial for you to get out of today's session. CMMC doesn't happen in a straight line in the real world, so we want this town hall to reflect how things would actually unfold for organizations working through compliance. December's town hall is very focused on lessons learned through 2025, and January is about looking forward. What's changing now, what 2026 is going to require, and how to plan in a way that sets you up for success rather than stress. I'm joined today by Jaclyn Jones, again, our CMMC compliance lead. She leads our compliance team, the consulting team, and has been deeply involved in real audits, assessments, readiness efforts over this past year and way before that as well. And you'll hear from Jaclyn today as well as we walk through these topics together. So you're going to learn a little bit about what this really looks like in practice. And with that said, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so to get things kicked off about where we are right now with the CMMC rollout and enforcement landscape, the 48 CFR final rule went live in November 2025. And while not every contract includes CMMC language yet, enforcement is no longer theoretical. We are already seeing requirements flow down through prime contractors. We're seeing supplier questionnaires. We're seeing some language in renewals and basically bid eligibility as well. In other words, 2026 isn't when this begins, is when it accelerates. We've already been doing CMMC for some time now. DOD's been saying this is coming. Jaclyn, from what you're seeing today, how would you describe the rollout pace and enforcement trends right now compared to what organizations expected even just a year ago?
Yeah, so it's about a year ago, a lot of people were under the assumption that clients would hurry up and go ahead and get their CMC certification in fall 2025. But then as the official 48 CFR was going to actually go into effect, we didn't really see that as much as we thought. And a lot of it was organizations maybe thought they had a good understanding of CMC, but as those got closer, they advised with experts in the field, and then they realized that they didn't have a truly good interpretation of the CMC controls. And so we didn't see as many companies get their CMC certification in fall 2025 as it may have been projected, in my opinion. But now what we're seeing is there are several that did. They're getting ahead of the game, and they may anticipate contracts having CMC certification requirements sooner rather than later. But now we're really seeing that ramp up. So Now we're in phase one. Phase one is officially begun as of November 10th of 2025. And so now you've got the first, you can do, most companies can do self-assessments for CMC level 2 that first year, that first 12 months. But starting in November, you're going to start seeing more and more contracts have that certification requirement. So a lot of this year is going to be spent with clients who are organizations who, if you haven't gotten your certification, they're working on remediation, getting all those 110 controls implemented, and getting their certification in time for that phase 2 to start, which is going to be November. So that's kind of what we're seeing. The big trend is now a lot of people, they realize that CMC is not going away, because there is still some holdout of that. They thought that maybe they wouldn't have to get CMC certified, but now they go, okay, well, 48 CFR is actually going to affect, it's going to happen. We have to actually finally bite the bullet and get that remediation done, get that certification done. So that's our biggest 2026 is a lot of our clients, we're helping them do the remediation part of it, prep for their CNC certification assessments with a C through PAO, making sure we're doing our last minute checks to make sure everything's ready, helping them through their certification assessment. And then, at that point, CMC does not end. It's not a one and done. And so then we're kind of doing the post-certification things, making sure continuous monitoring is in place, documentation stays updated, and things like that. So that's where we're at. That's what our 2026 is kind of shaping up to be right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the enforcement part, there's a lot of people saying, it's not really being enforced yet, so that's not they're doing it. But the one thing I'd like to point out, if you're listening, that's kind of the boat you're in. Enforcement's not happening all at once, but it's happened steadily and faster through primes than people expect. You're not always going to see the enforcement may be coming directly from the DoD, but the primes are a big thing as well. So it is starting to happen. So definitely just be aware.
Right.
All right. We're going to go on here. As we moved into early 2026, we've already seen some very real changes take shape. One important one to call out, in my opinion, is we discussed this during our Q4 town hall last year, is how the SPRS scoring and affirmation now works. Under the updated process, a minimum score of 88 is required in order to proceed with CMMC level 2 affirmation. And the score isn't just a number you can enter anymore. It's supported by how each control objective is answered and by real evidence. Submitting a score of 88 or above when the environment doesn't actually support it is just a compliance issue. It can raise the level of, a False Claims Act concern. I want to be clear, this isn't made to scare anybody. It's meant to highlight how accuracy matters now more than ever. Optimistic scoring and we'll fix it later approaches, they're just not safe for you to do anymore. Along with that, we're also seeing things like tighter scrutiny on documentation accuracy, more direct questions from primes about readiness timelines, and assessors are expecting 90 to 180 days of evidence when you're demonstrating things like maturity. A lot of people that we talked to in 2025 said, well, what we'll do is we know that we are planning on getting a SIM to cover some of the audit and accountability controls. And basically, we'll just get it right before we go into the audit and we'll get it good to go. You can't do that. You got to be able to show some maturity. And it actually says that they want to see 90 to 180 days of evidence showing that you have been doing this for that long and it works and it's documented properly. So kind of with that being said, covering what we just went over, Jaclyn, how should organizations be thinking differently about SPRS scoring and readiness in the light of these changes?
Yeah, so in the past, before they redid the way that you enter your SPRS score, you just entered a number. That was it. And so there was really no kind of validation or you actually saying, yes, I meet this control. Yes, I meet this control. Now they've changed that. So you actually have to go in and you have to say if you are meeting the control or you're not meeting the control. The system will calculate that score for you. And you have to at least have a minimum of 88 before the option to affirm your score actually was even enabled. So if you have a score of less than 88, it will be disabled. You cannot affirm that you are meeting that 88 score, which means that technically you don't have a CMC level 2 self-assessment at that point because you have to have that minimum score. So that's the biggest change that we've seen, and a lot of organizations weren't they didn't anticipate that to actually happen, right? Because the system actually calculates that score for you. So, and then also it kind of stresses the importance of that number truly matters, right? Because don't guess that it's the accurate score. You actually need to take the time, collect evidence for each of these things, each of these controls, make sure that you're actually truly entering a valid score in the SPRS system. And then now that it makes you say, yes, I'm meeting this control or not meeting the control, it kind of takes it out of your hands. It does it for you. So yeah, I mean that's kind of the key takeaway is now it's kind of requiring you to be more accurate with your score.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's basically just like, don't just throw in a number for a goal of hitting a number. You got to be able to confidently stand behind it with the evidence now. So
Yeah.
that's definitely a big change. Yeah, thanks, Jaclyn. That's is great insight for sure. Okay, so we'll continue from there. Looking back at 2025, 2025 gave us the clearest picture yet of where organizations struggled during the assessments. What surprised many people is that the most audit findings weren't tied to exotic technical failures. They're really tied to fundamentals, documentation gaps, maybe it's misaligned policies, incomplete evidence. I saw a couple of situations where the staff wasn't fully prepared to explain how the controls are met, which is a big part that a lot of people miss. Jaclyn, whenever you look back at the audits and assessments that we were part of in 2025, what were the most common findings or friction points that you saw repeatedly?
Sure. So you kind of hit on a lot of them. Documentation was thing one. So you may have a accepted process in place or a procedure in place that really just exists in somebody's head. They just know to do it, and that's the activities they perform day after day. The issue with that is the assessor is going to have to see some kind of form of documentation. That process can be documented, procedure needs to be documented, and then that way they can read it and then ask you to explain what your procedure is and do some kind of verification that that's the procedure you're following. And then there might be other things. They might have to ask you for evidence, maybe something's in a ticket in your help system, something, right? So they do have to have some kind of verification, and it does have to be, that is how you actually prove that it's a repeatable process. Not just one person knows what it is, that one person does it, or maybe a team knows how to do it, but it does have to be, well, what if a new team comes in? How do they know what the process is? So documentation is a big one. Another thing is that the documentation does have to match your technical configurations. So make sure that you can prove that those two things are in alignment. Another thing, making sure your staff is fully prepared for a CMC certification assessment. So there needs to be rehearsals. There needs to be, you plan on uh, come up with some kind of speech or kind of very basic bullet points that you're going to actually talk through for each of the controls. Is very important. You don't want to be unprepared or put on the spot and then suddenly have to, you're going to get nervous, you're going to forget things, the assessor is going to lose confidence that you're actually doing what you say you're doing. So those are the main things: documentation, making sure things actually, technical configuration matches the documentation that you do have, and then preparing your staff are kind of like the three big things I would say.
No, absolutely. I would totally agree. Most organizations weren't far off whenever we went to
Mm-mm.
look at these things, but almost compliant doesn't exist during the audit. It's either you're going to score perfect, you're not. As we've said in some previous ones, you can score the 88, but there are only certain controls you can POA&Ms. You just want to go into it thinking I'm going to score 110, and then you do have that little leeway if you need it. The one thing about coming prepared, we did talk to somebody before that they had already, signed up for the audit and they were getting ready to go through it. But whenever we stepped in, uh, their plans were not solidified, or really not a plan at all. It was really they're going to kind of go into the audit, but doing things like saying, you handle this the most, so you're going to talk about this during the audit process. That's huge. We went in to assist with somebody with the assessment, and what we had to do was lay out, because this is a huge company, they had maybe 20 people that were going to be talking, so we had to set out the agenda of who was going to talk about what, and that's very important. So that does indeed, like Jaclyn had mentioned as well, take a lot of preparation of the staff for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so let's talk about some common misunderstandings that have led to some trouble. A lot of findings came from misunderstandings rather than neglect. We heard things like we thought we were just going to be level one, or we assumed POA&Ms would cover us. We thought that we had more time, or we thought IT could handle this on their own. Which of these misunderstandings caused the most trouble once like the organization was actually in front of the assessor?
Yeah, two of those in particular we have seen over and over. So the first one, I'll talk about the POA&M. We assumed POA&Ms would cover us. And so you really need to go into your CMC certification assessment with the intent that you have all 110 controls met. Don't rely on being able to put something on a POA&M. First of all, there's only certain controls that can be put on a POA&M, and there's only a certain number of controls that can be put on a POA&M. You have to at least score an 88. You can't have any of those critical controls on a POA&M at all. So, and if you, I mean, there's no option. Either you have to prove that you're meeting the requirements of those controls, or essentially you're not going to pass your certification assessment. That being said, even if it's a 1-point control and you could put on a POA&M if the assessor, dings you on that, go into the assessment with the understanding, the intent that you have met all 110 controls, because it's likely maybe you misinterpreted control, or maybe you can't prove that you're meeting the requirements. Maybe a technical configuration suddenly is not working that it did work. And so the assessor is likely to find something. Or I'm not saying likely, there's a possibility they're going to find something. You do not want to rely on putting something on the POA&M and then that be the one thing that cost you if you would have just go ahead and implemented it anyway. You don't want that to be the cause of your failure, because again, if you put on a POA&M, you still have 180 days. You have to fix it regardless. So just don't rely on a POA&M is essentially like the main thing. The next one is we thought IT could handle this alone. So CMC is really an organizational effort. HR is going to get involved. You have to do personnel screenings before they're allowed to access the system. Employee transfers, terminations, onboarding, those things come into play. There's a control about posting content to publicly accessible systems, websites, social media. So it's not just your IT team, and then also you have to get buy-in from executive leadership. The entire company really needs to understand the importance of CMC so that everyone is actually working towards and making sure that they're protecting that CUI data, which is the full intent of this CMC program anyway. So yeah, just know it's not an IT only effort. It is the entire company. And this, I mean, that's kind of like the second thing. Just know that it's a company-wide effort.
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up as being one of the main ones. I'm going to tell you a little more about this towards the end of the town hall as well. But next month, we're actually doing the town hall based on CMMC is more than cybersecurity. Talks about how you're aligning compliance with the business, with the culture, the contracts, and it's so much more than just IT. And once you actually kind of wrap your head around that, that's going to help you with things like preparing the staff and things as well. So, like for instance, we had somebody say before, we didn't know that HR should be the one that explains policies with hiring and firing and things. But in their particular case, they needed to be involved. So yeah, the one in February would be great if you're wanting to know kind of like besides cybersecurity, what else is there to talk about. So we'll touch more on that. But the point of this section that we're talking about is misunderstanding requirements early almost leads to scrambling later. And scrambling is where mistakes happen. So with that being said, do your research. You can actually go to madsecurity.com. You can find all different types of cybersecurity and CMMC knowledge there. If there's something about CMMC that's not at madsecurity.com on the CMMC tab, I'd love to know and send it to me, because we would definitely love to get it on there for you. So you can do the research, but that's what we're here for as well. So if you do have some misunderstandings or something that you're not clear on, really just need to make sure that you do fully wrap your head around it, because it's a lot, and understanding it's the first part of the battle. So the real question becomes, how do you plan properly for 2026? A strong compliance roadmap just isn't about a target date. It's about sequencing, knowing what needs to happen now, what needs time to mature, what absolutely cannot be rushed. Organizations that succeed with CMMC are, they treat it as if it's an operational shift, not just like a last minute, let's hurry up and get it done project so we can keep getting contracts. Jaclyn, if an organization, wants to be truly ready to go in, get an assessment by late 2026, how can they kind of judge? What do they need to have in place by mid-year?
Yeah, mid-year, I would say you need to have all 110 controls implemented. So even if you're not getting your certification assessment mid-year, you need time to prep your staff. And one of the things Adam mentioned is HR didn't realize that they might be interviewed, or someone didn't realize that that they want to talk to HR. What the assessors are going to want to do is whoever is the main person performing that job role or performing that process, that procedure, that's the people they're going to want to talk to. So if HR is who is onboarding your employees, doing those personnel screenings, the employee transfers, if they are part of that, they're going to want to talk to HR. They're not just going to want to talk to IT. So that being said, you need the time to prepare your staff. That's going to be your HR. That's going to be your external service providers. You may have an MSP who has never set in on a CMC certification assessment. You're going to need to have a conversation with them. Make sure that any of the controls that an external service provider is saying that they are meeting the requirements of on your behalf for CMC, they're going to need to provide evidence. That's going to be live screen shares during your certification assessment. It may be screenshots. It depends on what the C3PO is going to request from them. But at minimum, they're going to want them at least part of the interviews, the ones that talk about those controls that they are responsible for. So that's the main thing. And you also want to do another kind of verification check. So don't just implement all 110 controls and call it done. You're going to want to go back through all those 110 controls. It'd be a great idea to do a dry run, which is essentially having all of the controls, and you're going to kind of make a game plan of who's going to talk about what control, what evidence you're going to plan to show the assessor to have how you're meeting that requirements. And that's kind of like the dry run part of it. I highly recommend a mock assessment, and that is essentially doing a simulation. It's usually hiring a third party to do it. And you essentially, you're acting like the role of a C3PO assessor, and they are going to walk through it as if it was the exact certification assessment. They're going to ask for evidence. They're going to show, before that, they'll even ask for your documentation, the system security plan, policies, procedures. They're going to review it just like the C3PO assessors were, and then have the interviews, walk your team through that, have you show them live screen shares during those interviews, and they will do the scoring just like the C3PO certification assessments. The more prep you can do, you don't wait till last minute, make sure everyone's prepared. It will help you stay calm during the interviews, have you show more confidence during the interviews, and that will help the assessor understand that, yes, you know what you're doing. Yes, you're actually doing these things. Don't wait till the last minute, because the more you put off, you're going to probably make mistakes. You don't want to rush anything. And like Adam mentioned, definitely go ahead and have all your technical implementations in place, your SIM solution, vulnerability scans, any of those things that will help you meet the requirements. Go ahead and build up that maturity. And then that way the assessor can confidently mark you that you're meeting the full requirements. So, but that's the main thing.
Yeah, 100%. So if you're looking at your roadmap right now, maybe you don't have one. Maybe you need a plan. We could help you develop a plan. But if you're looking at what you already have in place and it doesn't allow time for evidence maturity, if it doesn't include things like the dry run, the mock assessment that Jaclyn mentioned, if you don't have an assessment game plan, if there's no prep there for it, take another look at it. It's probably not very realistic yet. It's not fully hammered out. Definitely make sure that you've got the roadmap, you've got your game plan. So many organizations are still hoping they can delay decisions until later 2026. We talk to them every week, every day. But what we've seen is that waiting doesn't preserve flexibility, it actually increases risk. Pricing pressure, things are going to go up the closer we get to it being in demand. It's a supply and demand model, basically. Your services, your consulting, Your assessments themselves, the closer you get. You've got limited resources, assessor availability, rushed implementations. They all tend to compound. Um, in your opinion, Jaclyn, what typically happens when an organization waits too long to engage or to prepare?
Yeah, it's never good because everyone feels rushed. Again, the things I mentioned earlier, you're more likely to make mistakes. You might have to suddenly spend money that you hadn't put in your yearly budget. There is just limited resources. So you think that maybe you've got full staff and they can devote the next 4 months to CMC, but then you don't account for vacations, people being off because they have a new child, maybe they got married. So uh, the longer you wait is essentially it just makes it harder on yourself because these things that you have to do you have to put in the work, you have to put in the time, resources, and it's never as successful as the people that we have seen take the time to prepare and going into the assessment. Usually it's more smooth sailing. They don't have things. If they do have things, but on a poem, it's a very small number, and there's not any last minute surprises. So maybe you put something, a technical control in place, and then it causes something else to not work, and then you have a last minute scramble to try to fix all of that. So yeah, just for your benefit, just take the time to prepare like now and don't wait till last minute.
Yeah, it doesn't make compliance easier.
No.
I've got a quick example. We've uh, got a client now. Towards the end of the year, they were talking about wanting to wait. The reason for wanting to wait was what we hear very often, which is, this is going to cost me a lot to do this properly. Um, and basically, they just wanted to delay the cost as long as possible. Now, kind of like something I mentioned earlier, is that things are going to probably get a little more costly the closer that we actually get to some deadlines. And whenever primes say we need this done, and everybody's kind of rushing, it's just kind of the natural way that goes. Not anybody being a jerk or anything really, but it's just boiling down to, the demand really. So it does usually get more expensive because in this person's case, they knew they weren't wanting to. They knew they needed a SOC SIM solution as part of the controls they were missing, and a couple other things as well. And basically, we already saw that it wasn't much, but there was just going to be a couple percent increase whenever it went to the new year, just because service providers have increases just like everything else in the world goes up. So what they basically did was they went ahead and locked contract in earlier, and so that they could get the maturity under their belt as well as the um, security as well, because a lot of people forget the reason we're doing this in the first place is to be secure. So it's definitely a possibility that it'll actually be more expensive and stressful the longer you wait. So that's typically not the best game plan. All right, so we're going to go here to kind of tell you briefly. We won't spend a lot of time on this, but MAD Security's role in 2026 readiness. At MAD Security, our role is to help organizations live in a state of compliance readiness rather than cramming for the audit and assessment. So we're trying to make it the lifestyle. Through our virtual compliance manager, or we call it VCM service, managed, and our managed cybersecurity services like SOC, vulnerability management, user awareness training, we focus on sustainable processes, accurate documentation, always available evidence. Jaclyn, how does ongoing compliance support change the audit experience?
Yeah. So essentially, we help you get ready for the assessment, as in we help you with remediation. So what that starts with is we do a gap assessment. That's a service we offer here at MAD Security, and we go through all tonnage and controls. We identify the gaps, the things that you're not meeting the full requirements of, and then we work on remediation. So that could be things of action and tasks that you guys have to do versus maybe it's something that we have to do to help you through that as part of our service. Make sure documentation's ready, technical controls are ready, and then once we've gotten through remediation, we start prepping you for the C3PO assessment. So that would be things of let's do another review of your documentation. Let's do another review of your controls, make sure everything's fully ready to go, and then help you with your C3PO scoping. They're going to have the C3PO, when you have schedule your certification assessment, there's certain meetings that they're going to have with you. They're going to want deadlines to submit your system security plan, your policies, procedures. We help you make sure that those are ready to go to the C3PO by those dates. And then as when you schedule a certification assessment, as long as you communicate with us along with the scheduling, we will attend those certification assessment interviews with you as well as part of the VCM service, Virtual Compliance Manager service here at MAD. And then post-certification assessment. So we will help you if something does get put on a POA&M and you have to do remediation, we'll help you with those as well. But then again, CMC does not end once you get your certification. There's going to be documentation has to be maintained, updated. There's tracking you have to do. Certain things have to be done maybe it's 90 days, every 6 months, every year. We make sure that those stay on track and be done as well. Any kind of change in your environment, the documentation and anything else related to CMC needs to be updated. If anything that potentially is a major change, we will help you advise with that as well. We maintain all awareness of all upcoming regulation, any kind of changes to the CMC program that impacts the organization. So we really truly act as your compliance manager and kind of help keep all that on track, kind of like from a project management standpoint in a way. But then we do everything that we can to help you be successful during your certification assessment, and then we support you post-certification assessment.
Yeah, what you mentioned, Jaclyn, is what a lot of people miss as well. After the certification is over with, a lot of people think it's done, and it's like, what a relief. And you should celebrate. You should enjoy passing that and having your certification. But again, lifestyle, right? So it continues to go on. Whenever your C-suite is signing off on it next year, they need to be sure that they're still compliant. And whenever you get rolling around to year 3 and you're having to go through it again, you don't want to get into a place the assessor comes in and they're like, why did this change and this change? And everybody's like, what are you talking about? We didn't do that. And something may have happened without even whoever's in charge of it knowing. So yeah, I mean, just staying on it, that ongoing support, it's huge. It's something that a lot of people misses. And again, our goal is to not only help you pass the assessment, it's to make it uneventful, smooth, so that we can go in. You're not stressed the whole time during it. We're there to act as an advocate for you, so that if they do come in and they say, no, this isn't meeting this control, we've been through several audits with several different environments, and the experts basically can come in and say, we did meet this control because we did this, and this is how it's met. I've seen it happen time and time again during the assessments. MAD Security can definitely play a huge role in readiness if you do need some assistance for that. So we do want to get to your questions. We do have a live Q&A coming up here in just a quick moment, but I do want to share with you a few things that we are actually gifting to you to say thank you for coming to join us at the town hall. What we do have here is a free pre-assessment. This pre-assessment, if you go to this link, it'll actually take you through 31 questions that you'll answer yes, no, or I am not sure. And what it's going to let us know is a pretty good idea on how you would do if you were to go be audited today. Then you're going to have the free CMMC master bundle. There's 5 incredible documents in there. They're going to be very valuable for you. You got the 5 steps to achieving CMMC compliance. You've got CMMC level compliance, level 2 compliance checklist. Understanding CMMC scoping is the 3rd. The 4th one is protecting critical data in the defense industry. And number 5 is an article on CMMC enclaves. I think you're going to find a lot of valuable information within that master bundle. Then we have the free CMMC assessment guide. It's actually going to give you some tips and tricks for going through the assessment itself. And then you also have the ability to schedule a time. You can either email me a day or time that works for you. You can use my meeting link to put time on the calendar just for us to have a brief conversation, maybe 15, 20 minutes to talk about what you're currently doing for cybersecurity and CMMC compliance readiness and see if and how MAD Security might be able to assist. Because we'll be the first ones to tell you if we have a conversation and, it's not a good fit, then we'll say, hey, we're just not a good fit for getting you where you need to go. Or we have the conversation and say, we've seen this time and time again, and you look kind of like a client that we did this with before. I believe we can assist, and we can further the conversation from there. So you're more than welcome. Use that meeting link or email address. We can get some time set up that's convenient for you. All right. So with that being said, we are going to go ahead and get over to today's live Q&A session. This is the opportunity that you have to actually ask. It's most likely going to be Jaclyn answering these questions here for you, that maybe you have some questions about CMMC or requirements or contracts or the audit or assessment process itself. This is your time. We've only got maybe 8-9 minutes to go through these. So if we don't get to your question, we will get back to you by email follow-up later. So please go ahead and submit all the questions you have, and we'll go ahead and get started here. All right, going through them now. Just a moment, we'll get started. All right, so here we go. Keep the questions coming. We've got the questions here. We're going to just go through them in the order we received them. If our contracts don't mention CMMC yet, do we really need to act now?
Answer that. Yes. So essentially what you're going to start seeing, if you do anticipate having a contract that is going to require you to protect CUI, again, as we're in the phase rollout right now, it does take time to prepare to get your certification assessment. Fall 2026 is when you're going to see phase 2 rollout happen. It's going to be November. But what we're seeing is prime contractors are lining up their supply chain, making sure it's secure. They might start requiring their subcontractors to have certification assessments and pass them earlier than you're going to actually see the CUI, the CMC certification assessment requirements actually be in a contract. So you can't really rely on I can wait till later this year. I can wait to maybe 2027. So because it is, you do need to take the time to prepare. It is a lot of time. A lot of organizations underestimate the time that it takes to meet the requirements of control, do those final checks that you have to do the prep for the certification assessment, actually provide the documentation that you're required to, go through the interviews, and then any kind of post certification you have to do. Maybe you put some on POA&M, you got 6 months to remediate, but that is the time starts from a specific time frame, and that's proving that you've met all the controls. You can't have your POA&M and the controls examined at day 180. I mean, that's 180 is kind of the last day that you have to get it done. So that being said, acting now is what you need to do. It is a timely process. It does take some time. And so waiting is just to your detriment. You're going to end up rushing, like we talked about earlier. You're more likely to make mistakes. So do not wait. You really actually do need to act now.
Absolutely. The next question, I went back and checked what time it was submitted. It was before we went over it. So I'm just going to quickly recap this. We'll move on to the next one. It says, can't we just submit at 88 and fix the rest later with the POA&M? What I will say here is that, as Jaclyn and myself had mentioned, that everything that you enter there is going to have to be accurate and supported by evidence, and that you're going to have to submit that you're meeting each control, and it'll actually make the score for you. So with that being said, if you know you have the 88 and you've got the evidence for it and you know it's there, then sure. If you don't have that, it's not going to allow you to move on, and you don't want to put false information in there. We're going to skip over another one that was covered as well during the time, and then move on to a new one here. So we did get a question, Jaclyn, that says, what it says is Europe compliant with SCL2 3.1315. Let's see. Could somebody elaborate on that question. Doesn't show me who posted it, but if we could get some elaboration, and it may be to where we would go look for some information there, but just maybe a little more context around the question. We will come back to that one here in just a moment. All right, Jaclyn, next question was, do all companies need the same tools and architecture to be compliant?
No, definitely not. That's the best thing about CMC. It can be applicable to you can make it fit to your environment. So that's why there are things such as the organization defines this to be this specific way, and then you basically say this is what you're doing. You have to you verify that that's what you're doing. So there's no one single solution that only works for CMC. You can implement it multiple different ways, different tools, technology, solutions, people, roles, and so not necessarily. But if you need to know how you're operating your company can fit into CMC, or CMC can actually fit into how you're operating your company, then consultants of Mad Security can definitely help you with that. We can help you with scoping, things that give you ideas of things that you can put into place to meet the requirements. But short answer of that is there is no like single solution, right? You can meet it in multiple different ways.
Yeah, we actually have that asked a lot. Some people come to us and they want to know what our solution is, what it takes to be compliant. And the truth is, there's a few different ways that you can get to some of these controls. That's one thing that we'll do is we'll be a little bit, we like to say the word agnostic to your tech stack. So if you do have some things already in place, we don't necessarily make you rip and replace everything. We will work around what you do have. Okay, so this asked, we kind of asked this one, but I think it's an important one to touch on. How involved does leadership really need to be in CMMC?
They need to be very supportive. And so what that does is if senior leadership takes it seriously and everyone at the organization sees senior leadership taking it seriously, then the employees will take it seriously. So that being said, and senior and executive leadership needs to understand that there might be money that needs to be spent. Time needs to be invested, resources need to be invested. So they need to have the buy-in, and then therefore it kind of trickles down. The entire organization understands how important it is. So that's kind of the two things. It needs to be that time, people, money needs to be spent as needed, but then also that the entire organization as a whole sees that this is important and therefore they make it a priority. Because the flip side of that is if they see senior leadership not taking this seriously and seeing it as just kind of like a side project or something like that, then all employees are going to treat it that way, which is not the way that you need to treat it, because this is very important. High stakes kind of come into this. Some contracts may depend upon this, right? So you need to definitely get that buy-in from leadership.
Absolutely. All right, with that being said, we do have 4 more questions that we're not going to be able to get to today due to time constraints. Gentleman by the name of David, if you are still with us, we do have your questions still. If we could just get a little bit of clarity on if you were kind of asking, what I think you're asking is if your environment was hosted in Europe, does that meet the SEL 2313115? And if that's the question, then we needed to get some answers back to you. But just a little clarity on that would be great. It'll definitely be our pleasure to get back to you whenever we've got a little more time to look at that question. If you do have any other questions as well, go ahead and submit those. We'll go ahead and get back to you as well, like we will these other 3 or 4. We definitely want to say thank you so much for coming on with us to this live town hall. Again, we are going to be having the more than just cybersecurity town hall next month on February the 19th. Every third Thursday at 2 p.m. is when you can expect all of these town halls to take place. In March, we're going to be talking a little bit. We had another town hall lined up there is a possibility that in March we're going to have a current client come on and tell you about their assessment process. We're still in the middle of actually confirming that for you. Could be pushed to April, but that is coming down the line. So we definitely want to say thank you so much for coming and joining us every month. If this is your first time, thank you so much for coming on today. Um, you truly can't get better information than live, and you've got the Q&A session unless we could do the one-on-one. So again, use the booking link or email. We can talk about it one-on-one if we need to as well to kind of elaborate, go further, deeper into your questions. Again, thank you so much for spending so much time with us today. We appreciate you being here, and we look forward to seeing you in February and then again in March. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.